the friars, behold me in dread.
So, these are those records from the Wilmer State Hospital. My number, M5743, RPZ74202-02. This was written 7/2/1984. Steve seems to interact well with peers, is pleasant and cooperative with staff. Went on a nature hike to wildlife area. Oh, let's go back further yet to the beginning. Not that Minnesota owes me a ton of money. Oh. $625.84 ATU staff. They gave me a number right away. Steve is a 12-year-old white male who is being admitted to the ATU for the first time today. He was brought to the unit by his mother, John blah blah blah, probation officer. He had $10 on him. He kept $2. He was given the patient rights, a 12-year-old. And actually I was 11. I remember. It was given information about nursing service, chaplaincy service, patient advocate. There wasn't any advocate. I was put into problem-solving groups right away. The group was dealing with family problems, another issue. Oh, I had a psychological evaluation on the 29th of June in the year 1984. With your hands held in mine, I'd be sure we'd not sever. Of course, they said I was cooperative and pleasant. Until I didn't, do what I was told to do. They called it horseplay. That's what they called it, horseplay. Children's behavior. It could have been referring to something else. Oh, Sean left last night. I took my ring back. He took it off before he left the building. I don't give things to people for them to leave them. He doesn't appreciate it. It's mine again. I got warnings. Oh, for talking to other kids. M5743. With tears both hot and wild. Oh, that's what Minnesota did to me. I became a ward of the state, and then they assigned me a number. Like I was property. And then they didn't protect me. They listed other numbered boys in there too. How was that? Said I was appropriate in groups. and that I responded well to confrontation. Of course, I was taught how to do that from an early age, despite authority right in the face. I would not disclose those numbers, or it doesn't matter. They are just numbers to the state and how much they paid for me. You know, a product of their environment. You get it? A state secret. Or a mistake of unspeakable proportions. Now that I'm free. You get it? Oh, here on 8/25 of 84, my mom and Debbie came to visit me. Of course, that was Debbie, not Deborah. Who in God's green earth is Deborah? Hold on. I called the Attorney's General office today again, and that Sarah woman is out of the office. I told her I could sue the state of Minnesota for millions and millions of dollars for damaging one of its own. It said I was demanding of my mother here 8/11/1984. Oh, and the 15th of that same month, Steve was visited by his natural father and his sister, and they were allowed. Do you see how they treated me? They allowed my own father to visit me. Again, my father visited me. Of course, I had no money, and since I was awarded the state on the 22nd of August of 94, or of 1984, sorry, they took me to JCPenney's to get some clothing. They had to buy my clothing too. Let me get to some of the psychological assessments that Lynn's father did. Dr. Eichelberger. Wasn't it strange that I ended up dating her for so long? Oh yeah, I remember her. Mary. Oh, this is what Steve's mother, a rather inadequate woman, seems to be supportive of his placement. His recent home visit raised serious questions. I wonder why they should never have let me have gone back to her, but I wanted to. And I would never change a thing. The state hospital records the Rice Hospital records were even more interesting. They were even more damning. My grandma had to stop working in the psych unit as a cleaning lady at that time. Even though she visited me every day, they disallowed her from working there. You know what that did to her? It nearly killed her. And Deborah thinks she knows her. She texted me that, oh, the secrets I know about Deborah or Debbie. Costa Rica. Exactly. Oh, yes, they said that I had actions during my home visit or my visit. And there was no supportive, parental supportive or monitoring. Ah! But guess what? They kept sending me back to her. Oh, and I like to play pool and table games. Guess where a lot of this sexual abuse happened? They knew that too. Of course, Sean was right. They were professionals. They were nurses and psychologists and healthcare workers that watched and knew little boys were being sexually abused and did nothing.
I am stretched on your grave and will lie there forever.
Of course, I had an accident
With
there.
your hands held in
Here it says that I refused
mine,
x-rays.
sure with not silver. My apple tree, my bride.
I should call on the spirits of those boys.
This time we were together.
You know, Miller's Club.
I smell of the earth, and I'm staying by the
They said I was critical of others. They were sexually abusing you. I have to laugh about it, otherwise I would cry.
From night until morning, I am stretched at your head.
I told my grandma. I think that almost broke her heart.
With tears both hot and wild. Oh,
Not that the state of Minnesota forced me to go into more and more treatment and to speak to them. There's David's name again. I spited him. And I said before, they stuck me in a room with him. A little boy, somebody who was trying to rip him away from his home. And he would have sent me to Sauk Center. Mary came and visited me there because she loved me. Of course, she couldn't adopt you, Steve. She ended up adopting those two African American kids. Of course, they always said I was making good progress. And eventually they mainstreamed me into regular school. Even though I was overly sexualized for an 11-year-old. Even Cabrini got the dates of my admission there wrong. They said it was in December. Well, it was in November. Because I went to my sister's house for Thanksgiving. And I had already moved in. Good thing I know that. Because Johnny was there. And I had just left our RC. And I went to the Colsing's house. And you know what I used to do? I used to go walking on the ice on the lake and walk around empty fish houses. And they had those 2 dogs. And I love those dogs. I won't say what kind of dogs they were, though. My grandma used to send me dollar bills. They had a canteen there where we could buy things. I already told you about the nightmares going on in those tunnels. They said I can be disruptive. Let me see, an 11-year-old in a facility with 16 and 17 and 18-year-olds. Special ordered by the state of Minnesota to be there for a mother who couldn't take care of 5 children. So the state of Minnesota at that time punished children for their parents' problems. See what's happening in this court trial now. And I will remove myself from it. But daily I will hound that court like a dog with the stealth and grace of a cat. You know how wolves hunt? Forever. Well, I'll show you their own handwriting. I put them on separate 2 pages on one, so it would fit in the book I was writing. And there's where my numbers were. And up here. And the nurses knew. They knew. Here again, I left for Mary's house. And I was gone for a while. Here in 85, I will soon become eligible for mainstream. Goal number 1. Goals for a child. I apparently had been satisfactory. Get it? Apparently there were some things that I said that were not allowed in the charting. Now we get into some interesting psychological profiles. I love these ones most of all. Professionals. I could have written a book. aftercare. Date of birth 7/11/71. White male adolescent. Referred, I was 14, I guess, when I was being discharged. That's a long time, isn't it? That's a long time in treatment for parental problems. Of course, a lot of what they said that I did wasn't really true. I did take the blame for a lot of things that I didn't need to. Admission date, well, it was on court order. They called it an adjustment disorder with mixed disturbance of conduct and depressed mood. I was terrorized, tortured, strangled, nearly killed, abandoned, and they called that a depressed mood. How about torture? Oh, and don't forget the sexual abuse. I don't know. Maybe the gods will come down and smite the state. Oh, and then it said, I protested being admitted to the adolescent treatment unit. I wonder why. It says I was quick to establish friendships. I knew the pecking order in that joint. I told you I was a small child, and I didn't go through puberty until I was 16 or 17. I also told you why. Many times, abused children do not go through puberty until later. For good reason. But I knew, even then, God had, saved me from killing myself several times. And some of you may not believe this, but I was actually fucking there. And I know some of your names. I know your names. Oh, prove that I can be responsible at school. Yeah. Here's another one. Show that you can live within limits and control impulsive behavior. Oh, let's take a tortured person and then, okay, you've been tortured your whole life. Now live within these controls. Torture. Of course, Minnesota is outside the torture business, right? No. They were torturing this child. I'm not angry about it. I'm just stating the fact. Oh, and I was guilty of running away and engaging in other types of negative behavior without thought of the consequences. So what? I'm an adult now. And the only consequences I hold is to them out there. I built myself up from dirt so many times. She would let them all fall. Maybe I should let her out. And then they said, improve family ties, continue day visits at home, explore possibilities of the Candiota County Boys Group Home. Well, that was a no-brainer. They were going to send me there anyways. And I like to be active. And then when I was too active, I got restrictions. Isn't that a contradiction? And like, yes, be active, but then don't be too active because we're going to restrain you. Which they did. Oh, I like newspaper group and values clarification. Oh, because I was overly sexualized. That didn't end. Tis time we were together. Oh, and then they said this. Prognosis. Favorable on the short range, but guarded on the long range in view of the chronicity of his problems. Oh, and then the discharge to the boys' home. Another state facility, property of Minnesota, freed, unleashed to spew its venom back at them. With tears both hot and wild. I want to get to state of Minnesota, county lot number. Jeez. They said I was habitually truant. They had me on probation until I was 16. That his custody, care, and control be granted to the Candiota County Family Service Agency for placement in residential treatment. That was not residential treatment. That was called an institution. With a special court order to place me there. And it can say a certain time. I remember when I was there. Oh, it said that I was involved in theft. Oh, and ended up by stealing 50 cents. We were living in a garage, too. They even underlined it that Mr. Chance was involved in physical abuse of the children, most notably Steve, or Stephen. Of course, I reported that they wanted to have counseling sessions so they could better understand what happened to Steve Steve, now Stephen. I guess they taught me so much about counseling. They said, they wrote down, according to myself, I was lazy. I was never lazy as a child. We were always outside running from Tom, mostly. And having fun. They said I was a TV freak. Of course, my grandma paid for HBO at the time when we lived in California. Yeah. Look what I keep on a chain now. And there's no disrespect meant. It's kind of how I've felt my whole life. You know. Maybe I shouldn't have cleaned the filth off of that side. Off of her. I should have let her stay a dirty cow. But that's not me. I had discipline problems in school. I was in the state hospital, and people in Wilmer made fun of me every day. And they didn't know that it wasn't my fault. And I got mixed up in the wrong crowd of kids because I was in the state hospital. For truancy, too. Truancy. You go to the state hospital. That's an 11-year-old for truancy. He lacks trust and is quite suspicious. I was tortured by men and by women. Ladies and gentlemen, that's you. Locked away inside their silent screens. But for now, let us dance away this starry night. Filled with the glow of fire and stars, and with the dawn, our sun will rise. I don't know how they do that to a child. It's kind of like countries in the world. Same thing. How do they do that? And then they would make me sit in these staff meetings with them. And I would get restricted, so I couldn't go outside the building. So you've got a kid who doesn't trust authority figures and who's getting sexually and emotionally abused by older inmates. And then you restrict him to the building. What do you think happens? Oh, and then they had a step program. Step 1, 2, 3, and 4. Fuck the step program. I would not see any of these kids in treatment. I would show them love. I'd show them what a parent is and what a home can be. The state of Minnesota is complicit in destroying children. And what I talked about in other countries, what that breeds into them, it didn't really breed that into me. it bred some compassion and some understanding and a fire inside me, or a light. And maybe I am the light bringer. Maybe I do bring light and ugliness. Complete at least 3 successful home visits in the next 3 months. This was in the 80s. My mom didn't want me. I often failed that one. So it wasn't a realistic expectation. Not that I wanted anywhere. But they even list all the professionals who were here. A doctor, a social worker, a graduate degree person, another doctor, a respiratory therapist, or a recreational therapist, occupational therapist, some education, nursing. Oh, and then they said I had a moderate risk for chemical abuse. I was tortured, and then tortured again by the state of Minnesota until I emancipated myself. So they compounded my torture by sticking me in places that exacerbated the problem. You know? Sean goes, I know you so well. Yeah. It's because he's been invading my privacy for so long. Oh. They said also my academic ability. I don't think they held any promise of me ever becoming academically successful. You know? I had difficulty accepting limits and accepting adult authority. Yeah. I was tortured by adults. And then adults were setting unrealistic goals for a torture survivor. Maybe. They even coded my MMPI. Oh, at that time I said, indicates some anger and mistrustful posture. He will tend to use rationalization if he feels defensive or is dealing with conflicts or loss of control and emotional dependency. You know what I rationalized my whole life? Other people's behavior. Because I had it under control. Yeah. And they don't like that either. That's why I told Margie to take care of her own shit and stay the fuck out of my business. Fix your own family before they grow up to be failures in school because you're not there to wipe their ass. And Chad, grow a fucking pair. Eat some fucking leftovers. There, I said it. And Douglas, Dad, call me once in a while, you prick. Your seed's in me. Or is a part of me. You know? You coward. I don't give a shit what you were going through. How's that? You're ashamed of your son for being sexual? Don't make me tell you what you did. Okay. Steve will likely see himself as having many friends, being rather self-sufficient, ambitious, and friendly. Sexuality concerns continue to be present in his profile. Sexuality or sex education would be beneficial for Steve, with also this issue being addressed in one-to-one counseling. I told the staff, one-to-one, you fuckers. Of course, they didn't do anything about it. So then guess what? Steve, in college, learned about psychosexual disorders and psychology and nursing. Because I wasn't going to treat other people like that. You know? I wasn't. And I didn't give a damn what kind of psychosexual fetish somebody had. You know? As long as it wasn't hurting children. I would say what happens to those people. Oh yeah. I didn't even go into the other profile. Oh, here we go. Rights of the child. Here's when I was in 88 awarded this, awarded to the state. Oh, here, I've got a number here too. J84176. Hey, John. They actually fucking signed these ones. K. Not that this is all in the state records now. Of course, I could sue the fuck out of Minnesota. Not many of those boys were smart enough to get their records from the state hospital. They had a 10-year period before they destroyed them. And they did destroy them. You know why? They didn't want them floating around anywhere. Guess who's got multiple copies in multiple places? The smart one. Yeah. Oh, and then one of the goals was to develop a suitable foster placement. Yeah, it was called the Boys' Home. Oh, input from my mother? She couldn't handle the children she had at home. Why do you think Chrissy was in foster care? Ricky was in foster care. Margie got to stay with her. She was in the group home once. Guess who always tried to get everybody back together with that woman? Oh, just forgive her. My mom said I was excellent help. Yeah. I wonder what she said in California when I got strangled by the Hells Angels and Tom was beating us. Oh, I remember what she said. They were accidents. Obviously, Monroe's school in Santa Rosa didn't think they were accidents because they saw the bruises on us. Oh yeah, that was the school we went to, Monroe. And we lived on Mohawk Drive. Yeah. And Mom, you used to work at Hewlett Packard. Except Tom stole all your money. Linda. See how I'm not even mad? Oh, I liked crafts, tasks, and the newspaper group. Yeah, there wasn't a lot to do, you know? I think you either got that or nothing. Wait till I bring. The bigger copies are better. Oh, of course, I put them online once. Obviously, somebody got their hands on them. They probably know that shit. M5743 could sue Minnesota for millions of dollars. I told that to the Attorney General's office today. Not that anybody would take up my cause and expose Minnesota for abusing children in the 80s, in the 90s, and into today. Yeah. There were things in the night, like Steve goes to the bathroom a lot at night. Yeah. Steve comes to try to talk to the staff and we tell him to go to bed. That's because people were coming into my bed. Go back to bed. You know what they were doing? Reading. You know. I like how they call it the Wilmer State Hospital. We used to call it the Red Roof Inn. And isn't it funny how my mom used to see Lynn's dad, Dr. Eichelberger? Those connections. And I'm right there. Spooky. I said, don't fuck with me. Oh, and here's some, and they actually wrote down phone numbers. Oh, I was on step 2 in 85. Oh, step 2. Here's step 1. Here's step 2. Here's step 3. Here's step 4. Here's... You know. Let professionals teach you how to let people abuse you and then rationalize their behavior away. I did that pretty well. I did that really well. I'm gonna make heaven cry. Maybe it should. Oh, here. I'll sing an Ave Maria here for you. Oh, I don't like that tone. Get it? The tone. Oh, and Dad, you were so drunk when you called me. That's why I told him. You were... I'm gonna come get you now. I have guns. You freaked me out. I didn't even know who you were. You were so drunk when you called. No wonder why they were looking for you, and then you quit. I won't even say this guy's last name. Sean better be doing some soul searching and discovering up there in that fucking Matt's house. You don't think I don't know that I just sit in this just to watch him squirm around? More dollar bills for my grandma. Oh, here's some certified nurse. Good thing I never treated people like that when I was taking care of them. Oh, then I had ethos and some other spirits guiding me. Oh, my grandma would call and she would refuse to talk to me. You know why? Because I told her what they were doing and she cried. And she couldn't do anything about it because the court thought she was too old. She was not too old to take care of children. She had taken care of everybody her whole fucking life. She took care of half the town of Sabea and Blomkest. And everybody else's fucking relatives. Oh, pardon me. I wish I could speak in Latin what I hear in my head. And you know Francis? Pope Francis in the Vatican? Come to Minnesota once and say, you treated children like that? Not the state. The only place I was treated nice was bar none. That's because they didn't exclude anybody. And they treated them like children. Because it was a home. And that's an institution over there. Teen Challenge. Maybe it's the only place they can learn to feel again, though. Which I guess is better than nothing. And I would bar none from my home. I would accept everyone. I remember where that pop machine was, too. I can see myself walking down the tiled floor. You had to go upstairs to get into the living area. And then the day room with those double doors. And it was a big room. We couldn't watch TV very much. And I'll be damned in hell before I let Sean out of his hell that he's put himself in. Not that being damned in hell would hurt me. Not at all, actually. I'd feel right at home in any environment. Oh, I requested to have passes to go see my mom, and they refused. But then they wanted me to get that. They would set these goals that I couldn't obtain, but then when I asked to do it, they refused, and then I would fail. I told you that I called Kim and told her I should never have talked to her. And then in many ways now that she had her own agenda. She shared information she shouldn't have. I hope she has to watch this. I'm sorry, Kim. I trusted you too, and you failed. Of course, they won't show that in court. Your records, Kim. I already said that because they spoke of how much I loved Tara and how much she was hurting me at that time. I objected to, like, they would give you points for doing thing, and I objected to it. And then, like a child would do with staff, I went ahead of them and said, "Staff's coming." I got in trouble. I really like the parts in here when they go, "Oh yeah, you know, he knows a lot about names of sexual, knows a lot of information about sex already for being his age, but uses some terms inappropriately." Really? Well, let's see. I've only ever been tortured and sexually abused and overly sexualized because of mistrust of authority figures and physical abuse. So yes, we did have sex education. Guess what that does? Let's see. You stick a bunch of prepubescent boys with post-puberty boys in the same group, and you talk about sexual things. I don't know. 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 Who knows? Maybe somebody knows. One day, too, that church will open up those records and expose those priests and the nuns. They did not escape sexual abuse. They were abusing girls, too. And they call them quarters. Like, quarterly staffing. Like, and Sean goes, "Until you love me. Nah. Until you leave my ring that I gave you and now it's mine again." You know? He can keep what's up there. You know? They put me in step 1 frequently. And I got restricted to the day room for days. Okay, so you take a tortured person, a tortured little boy with no family structure, and then you say sit in a room and don't go crazy. How do you do that? Well, and then they were giving people different kinds of meds back then. Old meds like Thorazine and Haldol, and even older lithium. I refused medication. They were not going to medicate me for nothing. At one time, they had me on some meds, though. Of course, they were amphetamines. And then they were like, "You're bouncing off the walls." Well, yeah, as a child. But when I used amphetamines in the future, I wasn't bouncing off the walls. I was playing Jenga by myself. Or listening to, like, the voices of the future. Not a good idea. Horrible. Oh, and I talked about Tom torturing us, and the fact that we thought we saw him in Wilmer at Perkins. No wonder why we thought Mom lied that he was, died. And I could not find record of that man's death. She said he went to jail. I was like, are you sure, Linda? I looked. I dug into his records as much as I could. Who knows what his real name was? Again, more money. Grandma would send me money. More values clarification. Okay, this is an organization at the time that said it was okay to take tortured children and lock them in a room for crying, but then expect them to talk about sexual abuse and physical abuse in a large group of kids that were committing those crimes. I told you that I remember that first therapy in California, that touch and hug therapy in the 70s. You talk about torture. Oh, and they said that I'd like to get attention in group. I was starved for any kind of attention except negative attention my entire childhood. And then they said I'd like to get attention. Does that make sense on a psychological level? Clearly, they didn't know how to do one-to-one communication. My sisters would visit every once in a while. And then some friends from Wilmer, from school, actually visited. They knew that it wasn't my fault, that it was my mom's fault. And I don't even blame her. I went back to live with her after I emancipated myself, her and Mark, her fourth husband. You know? And I liked Mark. That hippie. He used to wear a hat, but a railroad hat. I liked Mark. It said that I need to be challenged frequently because I was overly active in groups. Well, let me tell you, when you're assessing child abuse, any nurse knows this, or social worker, young kids that are constantly seeking attention and solitary attention from an adult figure, especially when they've complained of sexual abuse and nothing was done, and they write things like, oh, prefers to speak with staff, is quite clingy, and is afraid to go to bed, and is up frequently in the night, walking down by the staff office to look at them, like, save me, and then being redirected to bed. Yeah. I want to get to some more of this disgusting state of Minnesota. Of course, they couldn't say that much about me in school, because I did pretty well. I guess that's what happens when, you throw yourself into school because nothing else in your life is going well. So you need to study and take your mind off of the torture. I'm trying to find. Now, I gave this book to Kelly, you know, the one that doesn't want anything to be said about anything. I'm going to cross-examine that cow on the witness stand. I'm sorry, Kelly, for calling you a cow, but you're a coward. A coward. And you're going to be responsible, Kelly, for hurting Savea and Mia. Because of your own pettiness. And then one day, you're going to have to look back on it, and it'll kill you, Kelly. It'll break your heart. And if you have children, you'll have to look at your own children and think, this is what I did to 2 innocent children. And there will be a constant fucking reminder of what you did to Savea and Mia. And in every generation of your family and their lines, they will see it. The women in your family will look at their children and know what they did to 2 innocent daughters of mine. And Judge Edward T-Wall, or whatever your name is, fake courted gestures. If you have children, I hope you look at them and judge them in the manner of the law and not of the heart. Because you're a coward, too. You should have listened to me in the first place, you stupid pig. I'm just saying what I feel right now. I'm not really upset about it. I don't even feel my heartbeat about it. Of course, they took this probably from some of this. Fucking idiots. Oh no, I'm going to continue. I know, on here it says good. Make them feel it. And Chrissy, you better feel it too. I can see you sometimes looking out through my face. Of course, in this, the dates are all fucked up. It doesn't matter. I just wanted to say it. Again. I just wanted to say it again. It was me. Mickey Mouse on. That was me. That was me. This is in 1982. See how the dates are all fucked up? Judge Buchanan. I suppose that would have happened, though. It's funny, because I was in North Dakota when I was 10 for my birthday. Maybe I'm getting the dates fucked up. Either way, I have the records. And since no one else remembers it, and I hope women do feel that. It's mean, isn't it? It's terrible. Why should I stop? Why shouldn't I just continue this pain forever? You should see what Kim wrote. And then she said, well, if you have objections, just write them down and send them to my office. I think somebody sent her information and said that I was writing all these horrible things that I wasn't, and she didn't want to see me anymore. Maybe she didn't know that I wasn't doing that. Oh well. Oh well. I'm going to go to that courtroom on the 28th and object to everything. One day I'll make it back to where I belong. Not going to be in the priesthood or the monkhood. I already saw myself speaking at one place, shedding some light on some. And I will meet the Pope. I won't have very kind words for him. I'll listen, though. I don't even care where Sean went. He said this was turning adversarial. I told him he had those fake police come here. Of course, you know my phone isn't hooked up to anything, except them. I should destroy it. I'm not going to give in to that's what they want. I won't. I'm not going to change my life just for them. I'm not. And they will finally figure it out. They aren't going to change Stephen Philip Lindquist. If it takes fucking thousands of years, they will figure it out. I was never broken. And I won't be broken. You know? It's interesting, though. I said that I'm not a violent man, but I could watch millions of people die. Innocent people, too. Why not? It's been done. Why not, right? It's not like it hasn't been done before. Look what Israel did. Not millions. The Nazis did that. But they kill millions of spirits by keeping them pinned up like animals. And they breed their own hatred in that. Israel is complicit in creating their own worst enemy. And then they blame them. Well, and the Palestinians rightfully blame Israel. But there's another... You see how that went from talking about my life to politics of religious garbage. I know of some peaceful people. I know of some people who disappeared too. I have a warning to Eric. And not the library. And if anybody's in school, you know what Eric is. I already told you it wasn't surprising that the Walmerstein Hospital became a biochemical company with world leaders coming. Chrissy, you said that you didn't want to know what happened in my life. And now you know. I told you before and you got angry. Like you thought you could have done something. You couldn't have. No one could have. That's how the system was set up then. Margie, you're going to have to come clean about what you know about your own self. You like telling other people so much, your friends and stuff, about my life and about Chrissy's life and about Rick's life. You need to start talking about your own fucking life, woman. In your constant need to interfere You're not a mother figure to anybody but your two children. And even then, you're doing them a disservice. I'm supposed to be Carter's godfather, teaching him spiritual practices. And all you do, Margie, you baby him. And Chrissy, you know. I like the way you treat Alice and Ingrid and Ava. Margie says, of course, you're rotten to them. But I remember that night I got that text from you, Chris, at Sean's, and it said that you thought something happened to him. Of course, that scared me. And so I called you right away. Sean knew what was going on. I wasn't stupid about what I saw at Sean's house, or what I thought he was doing in the basement. I know that they were recording me there too. I mean, who has two internet services? I knew one other person who did. He used to tell people a fake. He wouldn't let them on his own network, so he would give them a fake login to another network that he had set up. And Emily, it was kind of you to let me use your Wi-Fi for the Minneapolis. It allowed them to track me better. And I knew that right away. I did. I wasn't shy about knowing that. Is that horrible? How I knew that? And I knew when to leave my computer at Robert's house. But not with you, Drew. Or whatever your name was. Remember, you wanted me to leave it in the trunk of your car, and I said, no, I'll walk with it around Lake of the Isles. And Robert, you knew him. And we waited just long enough for him to leave. And then you called me. I was expecting that. And Nakia? I knew who you meant. And these are just names I'm throwing out there. They don't have to mean anything, Silas. Yes. If not them, then you. That's who would help. And Devin. I actually thought you were okay. It was that guy that said something bad about you. And then I became really protective of you, and I did not mention that I knew you. I guess I am now. Why would I be protective of somebody that I barely knew? I saw something in you. And you were kind of nervous around me. I remember where we met the first time. And we just met outside. I'm not going to say what I met those people for either. It might be different than what you expect. I said I had an influence on people. Just my presence alone. That's alright. I read that book, A Road Less Traveled. It was a good book on treatment. I remember what you said to me, too. You'll have to one day realize what I did to them. I already do. Do you know, I was the only one nice to that girl. Everybody at Cabrini complained about her. And I said, can I please help you? She was in the basement. I thought she was going to give me a hug. I felt bad. Everybody was saying she's crazy, she's throwing things around. Maybe she couldn't handle what was happening at that time. I remember who came to... I don't have to get too in depth with the details. I don't really mind too much about it. I'm just speaking my mind about it. And some things will have to just be worked out in the afterlife. Or well, I could see something being worked out in some witch's council, but that would just be neither here nor there. And since I learned a few tricks a long time ago, and I said at one time Eric was stronger than me in certain ways, but not in some. And I said that Barb would be probably not so pleased with him about some things. And that's true. Somebody else taught me a couple really good things. How to forgive. Not forget. I'm going to start looking more into those reflexive verbs. Doing unto the self, as the self would do unto you. And then see what happens. Or withholding the reflexive verbs. And doing unto Stephen. And withholding the self. I don't know. Oh, it's already noon. I must have spent like a little documentary down here. Hours of me just speaking some truths. And I don't care what I look like with that shield on. I got that little word shield here. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I physically look like to any of you, because on the inside and in my heart and in my spirit, I know who I am. And that might be kind of confusing. Like I may look like somebody else, but you can't deny my knowledge of what I know about Stephen Philip Lindquist and his life, my life. And it may take others multiple lifetimes of learning and lessons. It might take the church a little while to rebuild from the destruction. Not some churches. I do like Sean's church, but there's some churches that are going to need to like the Catholic Church. They're going to have to come to terms with some pretty ugly things about their church. I told you about being in not in Drumcree, but being in Ireland when that Drumcree bombing happened with those children. I think I was there during another incident too. And Sinn Féin was not. They were resisting. You know what they did too? They did not do pretty things to people who. Not at all. But they were fighting. What were they fighting? A religion, not spirit. And they were fighting about. Well, they were fighting about being occupied. Again. And then about religion. Can you imagine what would happen in Ireland if their religious beliefs were destroyed? And they were like, oh my God. And a lot of those Irish priests were no better than any of the other priests. Of course, they didn't want to be priests. They were forced into it because they were the firstborn sons. An expectation. That happens in a lot of families. You know? I don't know. I'm not surprised about any of it. I'm not surprised. I'm just deleting all this garbage. 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 DNA testing. Garbage. Oh, Katie Ross. Should never have talked to you either, Katie. It was a charity that I volunteered my time. Volunteered. I told Ross that I wanted somebody that was neutral. Look at that got me. You know. Of course, there'll be no other lines of women in my family. Not from Stephen Philip Lindquist. I refuse that. And Debbie, once you get a grip on what you really use that money from Grandma for, then let me know. And you think it's funny? Well, of course you're not the Debbie I know, you know? Deborah. Well, I hope you're still making those capes, you know? I know you're in New York on the Trunk Show. Funny. Funny. I guess that's it. Next, I'll probably go through Kim's notes and read them out loud. You know, I'm sure everybody's already read them. How much I said I loved Tara Beth Keynes. And how much that hurt, what she did all the time. Sean called me a motherfucker. Get it? I do. I do. But my own duality shields me from it. And my ability to put myself beyond it. Beyond the games. And I guess if I had to infect the world with anything, it would be here. It would be a sense of duality. That might bring a few people down to their knees. Serious. Can you see what it would do to some of the women who practice that barbaric affibulation practice? Or what it would do to men having to have a sense of that no pleasure. I wouldn't see that happen. I would see that people would sit down, and I am not working for some fucking pharmaceutical company. I already said I wanted to work with wellness, or in my dream job, and that is not my dream job. Maybe we should see what would happen if there was no drugs or alcohol. Oh yeah. Remember what happens when that's the case? Lots of angry people. So then choice is the matter. Wow. I remember when Sean was driving me around, going south towards Iowa, and all these moving vans were following us. Same thing as going up towards St. Cloud. And he was like, do you want to turn around? Do you want to turn around? And I was like, no. There are no limits to how far someone can push me that I won't push back. And believe me, I will push back. And maybe that has a gentle side, or maybe that has the brutality of honesty as my gentleness. And he will come to terms with what he did, Sean. I don't care how long it takes. And I don't care who he is from a different perspective, from a different being. I notice the differences in hand signals here. I notice the differences in the signs, the colors that were different before. And they know I know. I think it's kind of, how do they come to terms with that then? That you know of a different reality, and yet you look familiar to them. But your consciousness is so different from what they see. That's not mine to worry about. I am here to say, though, that still Stephen Philip Lindquist will be known, even if it's through different eyes. It's my consciousness speaking, and those of others. And I don't know if Sean will even come home. He left this. I never give away, I never take back things. Except for this time. I bought it for myself.